Right, so imagine that you're us for a second. We're a group of longtime casual try-hard friends, and two of us had just come off our first competitive Splatoon experience. Around the same time, word was on the street that that big Splatoon tournament that everybody loves to rave about was open for registration. And naturally, we were all curious to test our ability in this tournament. So we registered. And once we had read through all the rules and got settled in and everything, we thought to ourselves, okay, this doesn't seem too complicated. All we have to do is not be stupid and play a best of 9 set every week. Yeah, it doesn't sound too hard. We'll be fine. Yep, we'll be just fine. Right? We went into this thinking that it was just going to be some walk in the park. And in some ways it was, in others not so much. And that's what I'm here to talk about. Hello Splatoon community, my name is Risley, and I am the captain of Mafia Studio, who had just recently come off winning Division 9A of LUTI Season 16. Even if Grand Finals didn't go exactly how we wanted it to, but that'll briefly be touched on later. What I'm really here to discuss is my overall experiences of being a captain in LUTI for the entire 9 weeks, and I would also like to share some things that I wish I had known going into the tournament. While yes, my team pretty much carved through the entire division that we were placed in, as you can see through the numbers here, I still feel as though there are quite a few concepts that I wish I had known and understood more clearly going into LUTI, and that I kind of had to figure out along the way. There's a bit more to it than simply playing a best of 9 set every week, and I think too many new teams such as my own and too many new captains such as myself end up having to learn this the hard way. That being said, what I hope to achieve by making this video is giving new competitive players and teams who are looking to play in the next season a better idea of what to expect prior to registration and how to adequately prepare for any similar obstacles that they themselves may run into. Before I get into it though, I would like to take a few minutes to properly introduce both myself and my team. Like I said before, my name is Risley, and I've been playing Splatoon as a casual player since December 2015 when I got the game for Christmas. I did not start taking the game seriously until around December 2021, and of course, I'd only officially started playing competitive Splatoon in January 2025. My team, Mafia Studio, consists of 5 veteran Splatoon players deriving from an old friend group that can be traced as far back as Miiverse, though most members of this team wouldn't meet and start playing with each other until around Splatoon 2. For several years, we would team up to push ourselves to the limit in league battles and Anarchy Open, to varying degrees of success. Other times we would just queue up in Turf War as a way of socializing more than focusing on our performance. Until last year, however, the only thing we had never done with each other was play competitive Splatoon, and quite frankly, neither did we believe that would ever become a reality until then. None of us had any experience in competitive Splatoon, aside from Buglet, who was exclusively a LAN player prior to him joining Mafia Studio, nor do we even know how we'd even be able to get into it. But one night in December 2024, I was sitting on my living room couch watching Low Ink, I believe, when I saw an advertisement for a tournament specifically geared towards entry-level players. This tourney included a draft system so that any player could register to play regardless of whether they have a team or not. The name of this tournament was Setting Sail. From the very second that I had learned of this tourney's existence, I knew that it was the best possible opportunity I could have to finally be able to try competitive Splatoon without having to go through all the trouble of having to search for teams and participate in interviews and tryouts, as a team would simply be provided for me. Initially I was going to go at it solo, but I decided instead to invite my friend Fiery Ocean to tag along with me because I knew that I would probably want at least one player that I'm familiar with on my draft team. I had also played Senate with her a couple of times in the past, so it only seemed fitting that we both try full-on comp together. We ended up being drafted with 2 other players to form a pickup, and we took our best crack at it. Now, like I said before, we didn't expect to do amazing, we just wanted to try out competitive Splatoon to gain a better idea of what to expect in a tourney, while also getting a better feel as to where we stand skill-wise. Now, being the goofy silly that I am, I did not record footage of this tourney, but as you can see here, we did so much better than we expected. Like, we never expected to even make the gold bracket, much less the podium. And it was from here that Fiery and I immediately made the assessment that we very well could have won this tourney if we had brought the rest of our friend group to play alongside us. So naturally, we were curious to see what would happen if we formed a team together. It was around the same time that we saw that Season 16 of Leaks Under the Ink, or LUTI for short, was open for registration. Long story short, after sharing our experiences from Setting Sail, as well as our newfound goals for competitive Splatoon, Saihara, Husreth, and Buglet agreed to play alongside us. It was from there that we formed Mafia Studio. And like I said, although we took the time to read through the rules and everything, we still weren't entirely sure what we were getting ourselves into. And while granted, LUTI was definitely a fun as well as a productive learning experience for us, there were still quite a handful of obstacles and challenges that we had faced behind the scenes, some of which we either did not expect to run into or were not thoroughly prepared to deal with. So while I can't exactly guarantee that your experience will be the same as ours in terms of performance, what I do hope to achieve by making this video is making sure that any and all forthcoming teams that wish to play in the next LUTI season, whenever that may be, gain a much better idea on how to conduct themselves throughout the entirety of the event, as well as how to manage and mitigate any common issues that may arise either within the team or with others. Without further ado, let's get into it. Leagues Under the Ink, or LUTI, is a tournament which spans about 2 months and is divided into 2 parts. The first part is a regular season qualifiers, which runs for about 6 weeks, 1 week for each round to be played. While there are generally only 5 rounds in LUTI, the 6th week exists in case of delayed sets, which I'll also be covering soon. The second part, should you qualify, is the playoffs. Playoffs typically run for about 4 weeks, corresponding with the number of rounds there are in the playoff bracket. Of course, this may vary based on the number of teams that are in your division or any changes that may be made to the bracket formats for future seasons, but it will generally go something along the lines of that. All sets will be a best of 9, so I highly recommend that you allot about 1.5 to 2 hours of your day to play the set to completion. While matches may typically conclude sooner than that, it's probably better safe than sorry to have that safety net in place in the event that delays occur for any reason. Upon registration, and prior to the start of the season, hundreds of teams that have signed up will be seeded into numerous skill brackets, mainly based on the collective tourney results that they have racked up following the conclusion of the previous LUTI season. These skill brackets are commonly referred to as divisions, or divs for short. As of Season 16, divs range from X to 10, with X being the highest div with the highest projected skill level, and 10 being the lowest. It's important to note that divs aren't necessarily set in stone, and there's quite a fair bit of nuance as to what constitutes a player or a team being at a certain div. Keep in mind that divs are designed to be a rough estimate of your team's relative skill level and may not always be a constant or accurate representation of your actual skill level, so I would personally suggest not to obsess over it too much. As far as scrims go, if you want to know what approximate div gives your team the most valuable practice, then you may request and play scrims starting from 9 and 10 and work your way down depending on the result of the scrims until you find the div range that you're most evenly matched with. It is also important to note that results are not required to participate in LUTI, and anyone in any team can play regardless of skill level or prior experience. There's something there for everyone, so don't feel like you have to prove anything for LUTI. Unless you want to, of course, I'm just saying it's not mandatory. However, I personally recommend that you do play a tournament or 2 prior to LUTI just to get an idea of what to expect in a comp match setting. Some tourneys that I can recommend to new players and teams include but are not limited to World 9, Reach, Setting Sail, From the Ink Up, Paralive Parfait, and Teacup. Discord server links to all these tourneys will be listed in the description, so feel free to check them out whenever you'd like. Oh, and last thing, if you're considering the idea of registering for LUTI just to see what div you are, and then dropping from the tourney before it even starts, then stop considering for 2 reasons. Not only will you get virtual tomatoes thrown at you, but this can actually get you indefinitely banned from LUTI, because there's actually a clause in the rulebook that says you can't do that. So yeah, don't do that. Speaking of the rulebook, that leads me to my advice. Now, if there's one thing that I really want people to understand, it's this. Please read the rulebook. Yes, I know it's long, it's boring, and you don't want to read all that just to play a silly game where squids and octopi relentlessly shoot ink at each other for no good reason. But trust me when I say that just sparing 20 minutes out of your day to read that PDF can save you months of headaches. And I know this sounds kind of obvious for a video that's meant to give in-depth advice for new players and teams, but you'd be surprised how many teams evidently neglected to do this one simple thing, both for their own sakes and for the sakes of their groups. Next thing you know, you have several teams spamming the same questions in Helpdesk and holding up sets when the answers to said questions were quite literally addressed in the very document that they did not care to read. Now, if you generally can't read it thoroughly by yourself, I get it. My attention span isn't exactly splendid either, but in that case, what I suggest you do is body double by reading it in voice chat alongside your team. 4+ brains are better than 1, and this basically ensures that each member of your team has a solid understanding of every rule and their intricacies. So if someone doesn't remember one thing, then somebody else might be there to help you remember. You feel me? Now, the second most important thing that I want people to understand about LUTI is that it is a commitment. So you need to be prepared to commit. Remember that you'll be spending a minimum of 5 weeks and a maximum of 10 weeks coordinating weekly scheduling not only with your own team, but with opposing teams as well. This can be a rather tedious task, especially if most or all of your members, similar to ours, are either employed or in school. This is why it's imperative that captains check in with each of their own members in advance to coordinate weekly scheduling for a given week. I generally do this with my team about every Saturday, but you can have your scheduling day be whatever works best for your team. Now, once you've determined what days and times your team would be able to play a best of 9 set, then you get in contact with the opposing team's captain and let them know what your team's availability is, and negotiate from there. Although this can be done through Sendu Inc.'s match chat system, it may be more convenient to do this via the LUTI Discord server or in Discord DMs. Once you and the opposing team agree on a date and time for the set to happen, you're both to submit a scheduling form for LUTI staff to have on file. While the scheduling form is not necessarily enforced by LUTI staff, it is still very much helpful to have in place in the event you run into a scheduling or match dispute with the opposing team. Once both teams have submitted the form, it is then mandated that both teams show up to play at the agreed time and date. If you or the opposing team fail to show up in the first 15 minutes of when the match was supposed to start, then the offending team will be penalized. It is also important to remember that if you are unable to negotiate a date and time for the set to be played, then you are required to play at the default time specified in the LUTI rulebook. If you're based in Eastern time like me, then that would be 9 p.m. I don't know if this rule will change in Season 17, but if it does, then make sure you check that. So do take that into consideration if you do plan to play in the next season of LUTI, and always prepare for that to be the case. Now, teams are allowed one reschedule in case they find themselves unable to complete a set, but there are a few caveats to keep in mind. Number 1, reschedules do not apply to playoff sets, so if you make the playoffs, be sure that all of your sets are played before default time or worse disqualification. Okay, slight correction, you actually can reschedule a playoff set, but it has to be within the week. It cannot exceed default time. Only then is it a problem. While there are some cases where LUTI staff will allow you to play to overdue matches anyway, I would generally advise against relying on their mercy unless the excuse is undeniably valid, like your house caught on fire or something like that. Number 2, any set that is rescheduled may be played at any time before the end of week 6. And number 3, you cannot reschedule a set less than 6 hours before it was initially scheduled to start. Last but not least, I want to go over things like preparation, registration, and dropouts. Going back to one of the main points I mentioned earlier, you want to make sure that you have a thorough and general understanding of your team's schedule and availability before you even consider registering for LUTI, as that will potentially save you quite a bit of trouble later down the line. I also highly suggest that you take care of any technical issues that you may have, whether that be in regards to Discord and by extension Sendu accounts, internet connections, consoles, controllers, etc. Yeah, make sure you have all that sorted amongst your team before you even register, because the last thing that you want is to be scrambling in the middle of week 1 onwards trying to deal with issues that should have already been dealt with prior to the start of the season. Dropouts. Obviously something every team wants to avoid doing at some point down the line. Dropouts commonly occur due to lack of preparation, time conflicts, or team disbandment. Though sometimes it may not even have anything to do with unpreparedness, rather life simply happens and teams are forced to make the tough decision to pull out for their own good, as well as to not inconvenience other teams who are trying to hold their own scheduling networks together. This also helps LUTI staff to keep the season going smoothly without having to constantly deal with disruptions here and there. Thus, it's important to know that dropping out is sometimes a more responsible thing to do in certain situations. For example, if you find yourself at, let's say, week 2 or 3 and your team still has been able to play a single match, then it might be time to fold. Just whatever you decide to do, don't wait until the regular season is effectively over to make the decision to pull out. All this does is waste everybody else's time, including yours. And actually, last thing, I would like to briefly go over how to use LUTI's help desk, which can be found in the LUTI Discord server. It does happen quite often where players and teams will misuse the LUTI help desk, whether intentionally or not, which puts additional and unnecessary strain on the staff's bandwidth. While I cannot 100% guarantee that my advice here will avoid any and all conflicts between teams and LUTI staff, what I can do is provide a general rule of thumb when it comes to creating a help desk post. Now, first thing you'll want to do before you even create a help desk post is to search through existing help desk posts to make sure that the particular issue that you're dealing with hasn't already been addressed. It's pretty common for moderators to have to answer the same question or similar questions over and over again, so check to make sure that your question hasn't already been answered. If you did not find anything that could resolve your problem, or if your problem involves something hyper-specific like a match dispute, then it would be wise to create a help desk post yourself. Keep in mind that when you're creating a help desk post that you'll need to make sure that the tag associated with the post is relevant to your question and or issue. Also be sure to state the intention or general idea behind the help desk post in the title section so that the moderators already have a general idea of what they're dealing with. I would also like to issue a few words of caution when creating a help desk post. Firstly, if the subject is regarding something that deeply upsets you for any reason, please refrain from writing until you've calmed down a bit. Even if your emotions are justified in the matter, an emotionally charged message may not be taken well by an already swamped LUTI staff, and in some cases the message may be misinterpreted entirely, which is why it's important to keep things calm and professional while still firmly and articulately stating what the problem is. So now that I've covered most of what I wanted to cover here, I want to take the time now to interview some of my teammates and see what they have to say about LUTI and any additional thoughts that they may have regarding the tournament, as well as just low-level competitive Splatoon in general.
Hi everyone, my name's Hasrat and I'm the Flex player for Mafia Studio. I was 90% a range blaster player and 10% a slosher player when we were competing in LUTI. Nowadays I flex between various blasters, pencil, and dynamo. I kinda just play whatever is needed for my teammates to feel comfortable. I'm also an artist. I drew the thumbnail for this video, yippee!
Yo, I'm Fiery Ocean, but feel free to call me a winner. I've been doing Crush since I first got into Splatoon 2, and I have one trick tip for as long as I've played Splatoon competitively. I don't dabble into other weapons though. Lately I've been trying out blue dapples, and it's been fun, but I haven't taken it to a competitive environment as of recording this yet. I'm also an artist, but I mainly draw Sonic and Yuri. I have a drawn line of Splatoon. I got a bit of it.
Hi, I'm Bug. I've been playing Splatoon since the original test fire on Wii U, and I got into comp back in Splatoon 2. I'm the coach/sub for Mafia Studio, so I pretty much just play whatever they need me to, but usually I'm a mid-line or an anchor, and I usually play 96 Deco or Splatterscope or E-Leader or something like that.
Question 1. What were your goals and expectations going into LUTI?
My goals and expectations going into LUTI were that we would win. Is that fair to say? Maybe not. I guess an actual goal of mine was to gain a deeper understanding of how to execute coordinated team play and rely on my teammates a bit more. Before getting into comp, I played way too much solo queue, and I'll admit that made me develop an unhealthy habit of expecting to have to do everything myself to win. Learning to wholly trust my teammates and step in when necessary was a goal that I believe I was able to achieve through playing in LUTI. In terms of expectations, I naively assumed that we would never go through any sort of scheduling conflict or timing issue, and obviously that was not the case.
I guess my ultimate goals with LUTI were just getting to play with my friends, and also getting out there to prove myself. I remember playing Standing Sail like a month ago before LUTI, and low-key expecting to not make it far in the tournament. But then we actually played it, and we just ended up getting to 3rd place in the gold bracket. And that was when you and I realized, okay, yeah, we're ready for competitive.
I mostly just wanted to get back into comp to some degree. I work full-time and currently am in my last semester of college, so time is pretty limited, but I at least wanted to be able to sub when needed. As was described earlier, I dipped my toes into comp back in 2 with locals for about a year, but I was looking forward to giving it a go in 3, primarily as a coach and again as the occasional sub. I think overall, going in with the expectation of winning any tournament is kind of a bad mindset to have, but it's a good thing to want it and to push for it. It's kind of a meme, but your mental being good is one of the hardest but most important things to learn for anything, not just competitive Splatoon. Expecting to win and not performing how you want to is one of the easiest ways to blow that up.
Question 2. Are you satisfied with how our season went, and do you have any additional thoughts or notes on that matter?
Overall, I would say I'm satisfied with how our season went. We dropped only 5 games out of 50, and I think a 90% win rate when you're seeded 31 out of 48 is pretty commendable. I think I would have been happier if the finals didn't end with multiple DC scenarios occurring on the opposing side. The victory would have definitely felt more deserved and not assured. Still, we worked really hard and put a lot of effort into doing our best, so I'm glad we pulled through and continue to do well.
Absolutely satisfied. I think we deserved a slightly higher div than we ended up getting, but I also don't know if we would have made friends with teams like Malibu Rising if we did. And regardless of what div we got, the fact that in our first season ever, we ended up making a whole sweep is just insane. Like, have you ever heard of a team just like going to like a whole LUTI season and just getting 1st place in their first season. Like that's insane if you think about it.
Yeah, for the most part. Considering we'd only done like one tournament together prior to LUTI, I think it was pretty good. I think the only extra thought on this is that Div 9 is kind of a hodgepodge of divs like 9 or 10 to 6. So I do think it's a little unfair for those who are actually at that level, but that kind of applies more to a future question.
Question 3. What is the one most important thing you would tell your past self about LUTI prior to your first experience?
The most important thing I would tell my past self about LUTI is that it's not that serious. No, really, it's not that serious. I can look back at our run now and say that I was admittedly very anxious the whole time. I think part of that was because I was in my final semester of my undergraduate degree at the time. Regardless, I would get super stressed leading up to our match time, and then when we actually got going, it wasn't stressful at all. I feel like having a predetermined match time set between both teams as opposed to a traditional tournament made me very nervous, having to hope that the other team would adhere to the predetermined time. LUTI being my first experience in competitive Splatoon only added to my nerves. So I would tell my past self to take it easy, coming from someone who's able to stay relatively composed during tournaments nowadays.
Honestly, I just tell her to accept that sometimes she'll fuck up. I feel like when I got the ego boost from winning setting sale, my habits of beating myself up over mistakes was a lot easier to sneak in. And not only did it muddy up comms, but it's also just really bad for your mental. Like, it's good to acknowledge your mistakes, but when you're making yourself out to be a failure when it happens, it just puts you in a snowball of negativity and makes you more prone to making mistakes. Like, you just gotta accept it happen and move on. Like, you gotta play the game. The game's more important than, like, beating yourself up, you know?
Having a sub is borderline essential, especially if you have any kind of schedule you need to stick to, and if you want to get to sleep at a reasonable hour. We got lucky this time, but even with the 5 of us, we had a few times where it was kind of a struggle to get everyone together when the opposing team wanted. I'm personally of the opinion that LUTI needs to be a lot more strict about when games are played and locking particular times in. Any change being fine as long as it's 24 hours in advance is pretty loose to say the least. Things definitely come up, but that's why you absolutely need at least 5 people on a team to cover that.
Question 4. Does or did low level feel welcoming to new competitive players? Why or why not?
I would say low level feels welcoming to newer competitive players, and it still does for me. A lot of the tournaments in this level are designed to bring in as many newer teams as possible, and I've encountered many kind tournament organizers who are very accommodating toward newer players. Not all, of course, but many. And the vast majority of individual players at this level are very sweet and willing to scrim too. Again, not all, but the vast majority. It does feel like everyone wants to help everyone improve, and I've witnessed very little self-centeredness or selfish behavior at this level, which is nice.
I'd say half and half. Organizations of tournaments and even LUTI can be questionable, to say the least, but I think the vibes of other teams you face can make up for it. Not every team is going to be fun or even sociable, but if you run into a team you click with, you can make some pretty cool friends. I've never really been one to care too much about how these kinds of things are set up, nor have I been a social butterfly. I just want to play the game. So I'm not really sure what would be like the best way to like tackle some of the problems, but from what I have witnessed, things can definitely be better, but they could also be a lot worse. So yeah.
Honestly, not particularly. This has kind of always been an issue since 2, truth be told, but tournament organization and all that is a lot better than it was back then, but the documentation, collective know-how, etc. is still pretty lacking. I know that's part of the reason you're pushed to make this video, because there just isn't much out there, or if there is, it's not really explained in a way that would be beneficial to new players. This issue is kind of more specific to LUTI as well, but the seeding system is also pretty flawed. I understand there needs to be some easy way to kind of skill or cap or floor tournaments, but like I said earlier, Div 9 is not at all a good representative of actual skill level in a particular div. It almost makes me wonder if divs 10 through 7 should just be done away with, and different tournament formats could be used to segment teams into respective quote-unquote divisions. I think it's fair to say most teams, at least in the top 5, are at least Div 7 or higher, and the top 8 are Div 8 or higher.
Question 5. Do you feel like Mafia Studio had the advantage of being a group of longtime friends, as opposed to being a pickup?
I truly believe that our team has the advantage of being a group of longtime friends as opposed to being a pickup. I said this since the very start. There's nothing wrong with pickups, and I do think that a pickup composed of strong, like-minded players that barely know each other can find incredible amounts of success. There's proof of that everywhere. However, there's something to be said about our team knowing each other for multiple years, letting us try hard casuals with each other, and continuing to succeed in competitive Splatoon. We're instinctively aware of one another's habits, behaviors, patterns, strengths, and weaknesses in gameplay. We can admit our faults and call each other out without outright admonishing someone who's a dear friend. There's a lot we had to learn about playing Splatoon competitively, but not a lot that we had to learn about each other. And I genuinely think that's what helps us coordinate so well when we play together. We're supportive of one another inside and outside of the silly cephalopod game, and that assists with our mental staying relatively solid in the face of adversity. Enjoying each other's company maintains the game's fun factor, and for me at least, it keeps burnout at bay. We're friends first and teammates second, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it'd be dumb to suggest otherwise. Not that pickups can't consist of people you just click with, but some of us have known each other for about a decade at this point. We've been playing with each other for years now. We've known how we like to play the game, and we know what we're good at doing. So I definitely think it was way easier to figure out what was going to work for everyone and what wasn't.
Yeah, absolutely. The lack of real teams is kind of a fundamental issue that the scene has, and it hurts the scene not just as a spectator but as a competitor. Having a consistent group to learn and to practice team play with and understand each other's strengths and weaknesses is absolutely vital, especially if you want to progress to mid-level or high level. You can still perform well in a pickup, but having a consistent group to practice with helps scheduling scrims more often, just makes the tax on your mental lower, because if you're good friends at least, the stress to perform or face ridicule from them isn't going to be as high. And again, it helps you pick up the strengths and weaknesses all of you have to more easily be able to address or account for them. And again, that's still applicable at high level, but it's way more important the lower level you are.
So what's the future of Mafia Studio looking like for us? Well, as some of you could probably tell, our activity has been relatively spotty since the last LUTI season, and a big reason for that is that a lot of us are currently at a transitional point in our lives. Some folks are moving, others are about to graduate college, and are currently figuring out any sort of way to make sure that post-graduation goals are met, and frankly, we just don't have as much time to consistently play tourneys as we would like to, since our schedules haven't been aligning particularly well. Simply put, we're getting old. As of when this video was in the process of being wrapped up, LUTI had officially announced Season 17 of their big tourney, and as much as we truly wanted to play again under what would hopefully be a more balanced playing field, we decided that we will not be playing LUTI again, at least not this time around. We came to the conclusion that it's simply not worth the time, effort, and commitment to play LUTI given our current life circumstances of some of our mates, and by extension we didn't want to inconvenience LUTI staff and or other teams should ours happen to blow up mid-season for any reason. That doesn't mean that we're going away though. We'll still very much be here, playing, learning new things, and gradually improving in any way that we can, even if it's at a slower pace than we'd like it to be. Our top goal at the moment is to eventually get Loink banned, which we believe is attainable for us even in our current state. So that's what we'll continue to work towards. And even if we ever stop being a team, Mafia Studio will never stop being a family. And for me at least, that's what truly matters. Now, one last important thing that I must note, if you take away anything from this video, do not let it be that you shouldn't play LUTI, because that is not at all what I'm saying here. LUTI is still a great tourney and organization to play under, and it's essentially one of the big cornerstones of our scene that keep it alive. It's a great way to challenge yourself in your team's coordination, endurance, management, and structural integrity against a multitude of both internal and external factors and stressors. What I'm really saying here is be prepared, because this is not your run-of-the-mill Splatoon tourney. You can and may be challenged in a lot of the aforementioned ways, and some teams, at least from last year, evidently did not sign up with the notion that they would need to go through such thorough preparation to ensure a smoothest possible experience, not only for themselves, but for all participants. Unlike a typical tourney in which TOs in the host tourney system will carry most of the slack, this one will require a considerable amount of self-management within each participating team in order to run smoothly. So make sure you have all this stuff sorted before the season starts. And on that note, I would like to lastly extend my gratitude to everyone who has supported me throughout this adventure and to everyone who has helped me in making this video possible. Thank you to my team for not only being good players but amazing friends. Thank you to teams such as Malibu Rising and Crimson Raiders for being two of the most kind-hearted, wholesome, and supportive teams that we've ever interacted with. And thank you, the viewer, for making it this far and listening to everything I've had to say about the great leagues under the ink. If you found anything about this video useful, I would highly encourage that you share it with your peers who are also considering playing the tourney, either this season or at some point in the future. Or if they simply just want to learn more about competitive Splatoon and its lingo that's commonly slung around, but they don't know what any of it means. Trust me, I was one such person myself, so I totally get it. And yeah, that's it. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up or even a sub if you'd be so generous. I may make a few more videos in the future regarding my personal experiences in Comp Splatoon if my motivation is still there by the time I finish this one. Yeah, we'll see. Until then, I hope you all have a good one, and good luck to all teams playing in LUTI this season. Take care.